So in terms of my presentation profile, I'll speak to what is early childhood stimulation. I'll talk to the first 1,000 days of a baby. We'll discuss early childhood stimulation versus early childhood development. Those that know early childhood development, there are quite a number of them that know early childhood development, and we know we take children to ECD centers, right? But there's a difference between early childhood development and early childhood stimulation. We'll speak to that as part of the discussion. We'll also speak to early childhood stimulation activities. What are the activities? And for that discussion, we'll stand up a bit and do a bit of activities around early childhood stimulation. I looked around for T-shirts from my organization because I wanted to then give presents, but I'll still do that and then give the presents to Mrs. Madembo so that at least she can then give those that would have won and responded to questions around practical activities in early childhood stimulation activities. We'll also speak to why early childhood stimulation is important or critical. And then lastly, what are the effects of lack of early childhood stimulation? So my first question that also deserves a prize is, what is early childhood stimulation? And that's a question for the science. What is early childhood stimulation? Oh, the presentation is controlled from that side. So, yes, Wally, what is early childhood stimulation?
I think it is a process where the child is taken from one stage to another during the process of growth. And this is done actually by various activities that is to do with physical, selection, hearing, lower senses, so that the child actually grows up following the normal pattern of growth is required.
Thank you. So that's the reason why this topic is important, because it separates early childhood development from early childhood stimulation. So he explained early childhood development. So that's the reason why then this becomes important. Sorry for the small font. But early childhood stimulation is the interaction between young children and their caregivers. So that interaction between yourself and any sibling that you're taking care of is early childhood stimulation. It provides children with the opportunity to learn about their environment from the earliest age. And the earliest age is when they are still in the womb. Are we there? I wanted to say, are we there, church? So we are still. So it is known that the first 7 years, and in particular, the first 3 years of life, they are the critical years for forming the foundation of proper development in a child. So the first 7 years are the most critical, but most importantly, the first 3 years. But we'll go even deeper around the 1,000 days of life for a sibling or for a child. It is during this period that a child's brain is similar to a sponge. Relate that child's brain to a sponge, and that sponge has water. And you touch that sponge and you feel that sponge, and you are playing with that sponge, the sponge that has water. So this is the period that this sponge or this child can learn more quickly than at any other time in life. It is thus crucial to provide opportunities for the child to experiment, to learn, and consequently develop appropriate language, cognitive, social, and motor skills. So this is the period where all the fine motor skills are learnt. This is the period where early childhood stimulation is critical. During this period, a child's brain, like I said, is similar to a sponge. And it can either learn very quickly, or it can fail to grasp things. The early years are critical because this is a period in life when the brain develops most rapidly. There's rapid development and it has high capacity for change. And the foundation is laid for health and well-being throughout the life. So the entire development starts at that tender age, and the brain will be like a sponge. So that sponge is really sensitive to the key things that then come in contact with the sponge, and one of them is nutrition. The other one is protection from threats. And the other one is opportunities for learning. And the other one is the interaction with the outside environment and the responsiveness or the ability to respond to the outside world. And the other one is the emotion. So this is the period where emotional support is really important and critical. So it is the period where that development is required and stimulation is required. And this is the period that becomes the heart of a child's development. So early childhood stimulation goes beyond just developing the child, but it goes into identifying those key things that are critical to impact a life-changing experience in a child. Next slide. The first 1,000 days of a child's life are therefore very critical. Between a woman's pregnancy and her child's second birthday, that's the 1,000 days, right? Between the pregnancy and the second birthday. This is the unique period of opportunity when the foundations for optimum health and development across the lifespan are established. That's the first 1,000 days. How many parents here, and I'll ask men, how many men have spoken to their children? Maybe now they are grown up. How many managed to speak to them when they were still in their womb, in the mother's womb? One, I see two, I see three. It is the critical stage, the first 1,000 days, where that stimulation starts to happen. It is a unique period of opportunity when the foundations for optimum health and development across the lifespan are established. The right nutrition and care during the 1,000-day window influences not only whether the child will survive, but also his or her ability to grow, to learn, and to rise out of poverty. And underline that this is the opportunity where the child will rise out of poverty. The first 1,000 days, including the period that child is in the womb. The right nutrition and care during the 1,000-day window influences not only whether the child will survive, but also his or her ability to grow, learn, and rise out of poverty. Child mortality or morbidity happens during this 1,000-day period. It is when we make or we break children. As such, it contributes to society's long-term health, stability, and prosperity. But it is important to note that approximately 1/3 of children under the age of 3 in Zimbabwe are stunted. And this is a reflection of chronic malnutrition. But where and at what stage does that start? In the womb. So early childhood stimulation then becomes important because we have to take care and ensure that we don't have stunted children. And with stunted growth comes challenges in terms of our cognitive assets, comes challenges in terms of our ability to grow. The effects of stunting lasts a lifetime, leading to impaired brain development, lower IQ, weakened immune systems, and greater risks of diseases later in life. So many children then face quite a number of challenges later in life because of lack of early childhood stimulation. Can you go to the next slide? So the next slide, we interrogate the difference between early childhood stimulation and early childhood development. And early childhood stimulation is done to enhance early childhood development. So if you want to develop a child from a tender age for that child to continue to grow, you are stimulating the child for the child to develop. So stimulation then is a precursor to development. Early childhood development is a cornerstone of human development. It encompasses physical, he talked about them. It encompasses physical, the socio-emotional, the cognitive and motor development between 0 to 8 years of age. So that's early childhood development. Early childhood development refers to that physical, the cognitive, the linguistic, and the socio-economic or socio-emotional development of a child from a prenatal stage up to age 8. This development happens in a variety of settings, be it in homes, in churches, in schools, in health facilities, in community-based centers, and it involves a wide range of activities from child care to nutrition to parent education. This is early childhood development. Early childhood stimulation, on the other hand, next slide. Early childhood is defined as a time that spans that prenatal period to 8 years of age. And it is the most intensive period of brain development throughout the lifespan. And this is how WHO and UNICEF defines early childhood. This period is the most critical time for the growth and development of the child and needs the utmost attention and appropriate care. The early childhood period is the basis for later success in life. It is the time when the child's brain develops at a rapid rate, creating plenty of opportunities for children's learning and development. A child can have a good start in life when he or she grows up in a nurturing and stimulating environment that meets his or her essential needs, such as nutrition, health, safety, as well as the psychosocial, and the social, and the spiritual, and the intellectual needs. So then the difference between early childhood development and early childhood stimulation is early childhood development looks at the physical, right, the social, but it doesn't go into the depths around looking at the spiritual as well as the supportive environment around which the child has to grow. The relationship between the parent, the other siblings within the home, the church environment, the community and the society with that child stimulates the child for development or for growth. So the early childhood period is the basis for later success in life. Again, a child can have a good start in life when that opportunity is presented. There's a difference if you do an experiment and you restrict a child, you put a child in a restrictive environment, and you, on the other side, the control is the child that's in a restrictive environment, and the other side of it is a child that's in an open and nurturing and all-encompassing and friendly environment. The child that grows to become a better person and a prosperous person is the one that is not restrained or restricted. Why? This also means that the child has a greater chance of reaching his or her full potential later in life. Why? Because already there is opportunity for interaction, there is opportunity for brain growth, there is opportunity to see and grab more opportunities in life because there is interaction between the child and the environment. And the environment also includes the parents, also includes the caregivers in the absence of parents. So you would find someone who would have grown as an orphan can be a better person if that stimulating environment is presented before that child. Therefore, it is important to address children's needs holistically because the absence of one or more essential needs can lead to negative developmental outcomes for children. It is critical, next slide. From conception to 5 years of age, early childhood is an extremely important period for cognitive and psychosocial development. And psychosocial development then looks at those things that we cannot see, but the things that then shape the future of a child. Young children's minds are still learning how to learn. Right? As we learn how to learn, it's a very difficult and intricate period because you're learning how to learn. And it is during this period that simple play activities that stimulate the brain and the senses can help improve their ability to think, to communicate, and connect with others. So it becomes important that as we provide that stimulating environment, we provide the stimulus to ensure that those opportunities for the children to learn are there. Parents should learn key principles like how a child develops in the womb, how to play with a newborn, how to stimulate young minds, and how to nourish growing babies. It is important, it is critical that parents should also learn to spark both physical and cognitive development in their young children. And it's unfortunate that we are living in an environment, in a world, and in a country where people are chasing for worldly things and chasing for money and chasing for survival and chasing for everything else, and neglecting early childhood stimulation. How many in this day and age are spending enough time with their children? It is critical that we remember and reflect to say the future generation is in today's child. The future leaders are in today's child. So we have to stimulate them and we have to give them that time. Young children's minds are still learning. And as they're still learning, it becomes important that as we spark that desire for them to continue to learn, we provide that environment. And when we're providing that environment, we don't need expensive things, no. We work within the resources that we are in or the environment that we are in to ensure that they learn. If there are stones with different colors, right, we put them and they play with those. If there are those pegs that we use to hang our clothes, we use those. Those are the things that are available. If we have cups that are different in color or in shapes or in sizes, those are the things that are supposed to be used. So we are supposed to, as parents, learn to spark that stimulus, both physically and cognitive. And when we're talking about physically, we're talking about providing that space that then the child knows that within a house, this is the space that I can use to play. That I can play around. I can play around this. I don't have to go there. So the child, if you then develop that child both physically and cognitively, then that child really identifies spaces to learn and spaces to grow. women learn a range of fundamentals, from identifying developmental milestones through play to lessons of nutrition, hygiene, food preparation, and positive discipline. And this is a natural play in women where they know how to play around with nutrition to ensure that our children are well nourished. But most importantly, hygiene. Most importantly, food preparation. And using what is available. And most importantly, positive discipline. Next slide. Oh, we're already next slide. So what are the early childhood stimulating activities that we need to interact with so that we are able to interact with our kids or children? Who knows the tummy time activity? Have you ever been on your parents' tummy as you're growing up? Right? That is the one that's called tummy time. So when that happens, so the parent is sleeping or lying on the floor or on the bed, and then the child comes and then starts to balance on the tummy of the adult. Something will be happening in terms of early childhood stimulation because that tummy time encourages proper development of fine motor skills by preparing the shoulder, the arms, the hands for fine motor tasks. So if you missed tummy time, you might not be very good in terms of practical skills. It will also aid in getting the baby ready to push up, to roll over, to sit up, to crawl, and later stand. Do you realize that these days we have these push, primers that we have? And we are affecting children, those are affecting children because we are denying them the opportunity to develop the fine motor skills, to also strengthen their hands, strengthen their shoulders, strengthen their ability to then do fine motor tasks. And then we'll think we are developmental. No, we won't be developmental if you do that. So we also need to encourage crawling instead of placing the child in a baby walker. Crawling provides weight-bearing opportunities into the arms, right? It also improves shoulder stability, right? It's an added benefit to crawling because it develops bilateral coordination skills. So you find the child tends to have more coordination if they crawl at an early age. The coordination is better. And you realize, and if you do an experiment, a child that crawls faster, if you train that child to drive a car, that child will drive faster. Quickly. That child will be able to drive, to be able to master driving skills faster than a child who hasn't crawled at an early age. Why? It's because bilateral coordination is developed at that stage while it's crawling. And that those mothers who will be saying, no, my child never crawled, she just started walking without crawling. No, she's missing a stage. He or she is missing a stage. It becomes important that we ensure that we develop bilateral coordination skills where the child uses both sides of the body at the same time. Have you ever played Follow the Leader? Do you remember follow the leader? Why were you doing that? Or do you remember Simon Says? Right? This allows the child to imitate motor movements. So those things are critical. You might think they are not important, but they are very important. Follow the leader. And Simon Says, walk. Simon Says, speak. Simon Says, clap. It is important because they facilitate action, but the action is driven from a song, right? So parents can also play an action song where the child follows along the actions of the song. This activity can be adapted by adding specific actions based on the child's physical abilities. So you can devise additional songs, additional interesting engagements or stimulating activities based depending on your child's physical abilities or capacities. But what you'll be doing is developing that child's ability in terms of physical abilities. It is the parent's role to be creative in adapting fine and gross motor activities depending on the child's abilities to provide the just right challenge. So the child has to learn to be innovative. You know the reason why the Chinese people are highly technically or technologically advanced. It's because at a very early age, they're trained to be innovative. They're given very few things to play around with, and those very few things to play around with, they develop innovations out of those very small little things. But at times, we don't want to expose the children. Like, for instance, you don't want to give a small little baby a phone. We think they'll break it. We think they do something else with it. But just try it. You realize that within a few days, the child will be playing with that phone. So it becomes important that we facilitate that role of creativity, or that we present the opportunities for innovation. Give them those brushes at an early age. You then start to see that they're starting to paint, and later on in life, they become good artists. So we need to ensure we expose the children to creativity. So we also are supposed to always incorporate meaningful and purposeful activities, as this will motivate the child to participate and persist in doing better. And it is important for the parent to look at the developmental milestones for motor skills. So you then need to measure, as you're exposing your child to those opportunities, you need to increase the small little things that he or she will be playing around with. You need to add to those and subtract those that are not of interest to the child. We'll be developing those motor skills that are important. But at the same time, it is important to note that stimulation activities are age-specific, because you cannot use the activities that are for an 8-year-old to a 1-year-old. Next slide. Why early childhood stimulation? 85% of the human brain develops by age 5. At the age of 5, 85% of our brain, this is where development happens. It is more difficult to improve cognitive development later, beyond age 5. 50% of a child's cognitive capacity is influenced by his or her environment. That's the reason why we say exposure increases the cognitive behavior of a child. 71 million children across Africa don't reach their full potential due to poverty and poor health, nutrition, and care. Why? Because we didn't expose them to innovations. Because a child that is exposed to innovations can survive better than a child that's not exposed to innovations. A child in a raw setting that has been exposed to innovations and within a protective environment can go and look for a msekesa and eat msekesa, right? Or any other nutritious plant from the forest, while one that hasn't been exposed to innovations will have stunted growth in the same environment, in a drought-prone area. Children not exposed to early childhood stimulation are likely to do poorly at school and to have limited economic opportunities in adulthood. This in turn perpetuates the cycle of poverty. Remember earlier when I said early childhood stimulation has a bearing on whether you make it or you don't make it in life. And it has a bearing on poverty as well. So this in turn perpetuates the cycle of poverty and contributes to the intergenerational transmission of poverty, poor health, and development, hence the need for early childhood stimulation to mothers as well as fathers. That's when people then say, no, no, there's nothing like that. Child development is a multidimensional and includes cognitive language, sensory motor, and social emotional domains, all of which are interdependent. During the first few years of life, rapid growth and development occurs in all domains, forming a strong foundation for learning later skills. Children living in disadvantaged environments are more likely to be exposed to biological and environmental risks, which affect brain growth and can lead to lasting changes in the developing brain structure and function. But why early childhood stimulation? Why is it important? It is important because there is substantial evidence showing that exposure to disadvantaged environments during the first few years of life is associated with many negative outcomes in adolescence and adulthood, including lower IQ and academic attainments. It also increases in antisocial behavior and lower earnings in adulthood. Have you ever realized that currently our suicidal behavior is as a result of those that failed to achieve early childhood stimulation as they were growing up? Why? Because they have lower IQ. Why? Because they didn't develop the fine motor skills, they didn't develop social skills. Because they have antisocial skills, they tend to be suicidal. And the current suicidal rate, just as at November 2018, last year in Zimbabwe, was 284,000 adolescents that committed suicide in Zimbabwe. And these are statistics that are only known because they were reported. What of those that were not reported? So we have a bigger number. Why? Because there wasn't early childhood stimulation. That brings in that the social motor skills as well as the fine motor skills, such that the child is able to interact and know what is best for them. Early childhood stimulation is focused on loving and engaging the child in playful activities that can stimulate them. Stimulation should be done with affection. So that's early childhood stimulation. It has to do with affection. So in terms of early childhood stimulation or early childhood integration or involvement, this is where we look at parental involvement, our role as parents in early childhood stimulation. And our role as parents builds a house from the foundation up to when the house is fully built to the roof. And when we talk about parental involvement, we're speaking to play materials, availability of play materials. Does the child have muscle stimulating toys or pieces of equipment? So the toys then become important. Or any other thing that stimulates the muscle becomes important, whether it's a boy or a girl. It is critical. So that forms the foundation. The reason why this graphic is this way, it's these toys are the ones that then provide the basics in terms of the foundation for development. So these toys, the play materials are critical. But at the same time as the play materials are critical, parental involvement also becomes critical. Does the mother talk to a child while it's also doing other work? Does the father also talk to the child when the child is still in the womb? Remember, we talked about that. It's critical. But at the same time, it's also important that we speak to punishment avoidance. Right? Does the mother express overt annoyance with the child? And when you say overt annoyance, are you getting out of your way to really express to your child that you're really angry? Does that child see the anger in you through emotions? And the child ends up feeling the anger. To an extent that you feel it on the other side. And if we do that, we are not stimulating the children. We're not saying punishment is wrong, no. But we're talking about overt annoyance that then gets into the child to an extent that the child becomes so afraid to interact with you. It is critical that we build that foundation to ensure. But at the same time, we need variety in stimulation. Does the father provide some caregiving every day? Fathers, are we doing that on a daily basis? Nowadays, children say we have either fathers, hands vana baba, or vana daddy. So the daddy part is the one that provides that stimulation every day. It's the one that interacts with the child. It's the one that talks where the child is free to interact with the daddy. And the father, Baba, is the one that when he comes, everyone becomes quiet. Everyone rushes to their rooms. And that's not a stimulating environment. And as we grow up, as we build the house, organization of home and the home environment and schedule is important. The home environment is such that when the child comes into the house, he or she knows where to put their books, where to go and play, where this is found, when to go and assist the mother, when to go and assist the father. This is the organization of the home environment and schedule. So we need to then ensure that we engage with the parents and ensure that they know the schedule in the house. Is the child's play environment safe and free of hazards? So the child knows within the house, this is a no-go area, right? I can play around this place. These are dangerous things to play with. In the kitchen, there are knives, and I don't have to touch those things. It's important that we understand and we take care of the safety of the children within the home. But at the same time, on the other side, we need to ensure emotional sensitivity. Did the mother caress or kiss a child at least once? When the child comes, do you kiss the child at least once? Do we do that? So it becomes important that there is that contact between mother and the child, and the father and the child, because that bonding is critical. And if that bonding doesn't happen, it not only affects the child, but it also affects the parent. And the parent then is also affected, and it affects the parent, the child that's in the womb, right? If that child is not bonded to the mother can end up having postpartum depression, right? She can speak more to that. And postpartum depression occurs to women soon after giving birth. And why? Because there's no stimulation during pregnancy. Because there's supposed to be stimulation during pregnancy. And a control experiment was done where there was a loving father of a child that's in the womb and a mother without a loving father close by, right? And a mother that mother had emotional anger around the father that impregnated her. So when the other one, the one that had a loving father, the father would come and caress the womb and talk to the child in the womb. When that child was born, that child had more weight than the other one. You can imagine. Disregard, they were eating the same food, they were in the same hospital. There was the challenge. So postpartum depression is critical, and postpartum depression prevention is a major goal to reduce major depression episodes by teaching women mood regulation skills. I like the examples that she gave in terms of regulating moods. Education regarding parenting and child development is equally important to avoid postpartum depression. It focuses on cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, and attachment theory. Cognitive behavioral therapy attempts to change a person's cognition or thoughts and behaviors and improves their mood. Because if the mood is improved, the interaction with the child is equally improved. So cognitive behavioral therapy is effective in treating and preventing depression. And attachment theory focuses on the relationship that a child forms with his or her caregiver, especially during infancy. So it becomes important that early childhood stimulation happens. So as we conclude, I just gave an illustration of, this is what I was speaking to, the postpartum depression, and then the importance of toy production or toy making. That's the next slide. That's the ending slide. That is slide I'll end with. The importance of using resources that you have to even make toys, those babies, where the child feel they have something that's, that they are using to interact with. So toy production, or you don't have to buy toys. You can produce these things. So these things can be made from the waste that you have, the waste clothes, the things that you're throwing around, you can use to develop toys. Thank you so much. Next slide is the closing slide. Thank you.